back to the channel. It's Spartan Sentry here with a special outdoor edition of Spartan Sentry. Oh, really, dude? No, don't you do it. This is not gonna. All right, fine, do your thing. See? They never remember the shields. Let's just cut to the video.
Sorry you all had to see that. Hi everybody, it's Spartan Sentry again. Welcome back to the channel. So I've finally gotten around to watching the latest installment in the Predator franchise, Prey. Oh, and for those of you who haven't seen it yet, fair warning, this video will contain some spoilers, so go ahead, hit that pause button, watch the movie, and head on back. So I know I'm a couple of weeks behind the algorithm on this one, but I will say this much about the movie. I liked it. Some of my predictions from my trailer review turned out to be true, and others didn't. But in a way, I was happy to be proven wrong on those things. For what it's worth, I will restate that by moving this direct to streaming was a wise choice on the studio's behalf. It didn't nearly have the VFX budget strength to be delivered to the big screen in a way that would have been convincing, and yes, I'm referring to the Far Cry 5 grade wildlife CGI, but despite that, I still accepted it as a budgetary limitation and not so much as them cutting corners, because they definitely went all in on the Plains Hunter design, also known as the feral predator. But that takes too long to say, so I'm sticking with Plains Hunter because it sounds cooler. On character development, I didn't have any issue with Amber Midthunder's Naru, and while some other videos on other channels have expressed some deficiencies and or extreme suspension of disbelief issues toward the end, I'll put my 2 cents in on that one before I close it out. She starts off as a relatively capable tracker hunter already, both due to her own resolve and with her older brother's tutelage as well. I know some will say she might have been a little too headstrong given the perceived gender roles of the day, but hey, again, this is an historical retelling, but rather a sci-fi story, and I'm willing to accept the fact that for the sake of said storytelling, she is the exception to the rule. I mean, she is the main character after all. On the Plains Hunter Yautja himself, I'm happy that for the first time in a long time, we have a suit actor that actually moves in a way that conveys the energy that Kevin Peter Hall brought to the Predator in the first 2 movies, and not something that moves so much like an NFL linebacker as we saw in the Alien vs. Predator franchise. It doesn't come off as overpowered, and while still strong, has a more balanced load set weapon-wise. I commented on this in other content creators' channels. I was fine with the Hunter having a more scaled-down arsenal that wouldn't be so much as an overpowering element versus the technology of both the Comanche warriors and the French fur trappers. So I will admit when I'm wrong, well, half wrong in this case. The fur trappers did manage to get the drop on the Predator, even if for a brief moment, but my prediction of Naru saving him turned out not to be. But man, this hunter didn't really need the help and tore through them like me at an all-you-can-eat sushi buffet. But back to the weaponry. I was very pleased that this hunter had a different weapon set from the hunters that we've seen in the past. Although the classic tri-laser and wrist gauntlets make it back into the story, he's got some new toys as well. Don't get me wrong, I do love me some plasma caster, but I think in this particular setting, it would have just been the equivalent of typing IDDQD in classic Doom and proceeding to tomato everyone in the story, at which point you have no story. And no, Naru wasn't adopted into the Yautja clan tribe as I predicted at the end of the movie. Well, not this one. The look of the Predator in this film is not that of a classic jungle hunter, but rather something different. Now, many have criticized its look once you hear the production notes of the lead creature designer of why it looks the way it looks. I think you'll be suitably satisfied. Trust me, for the TLDR crowd, this Yautja is from a different part of the Predator homeworld and looks different for that reason. Think like Darwin's finches and the difference in beak sizes based on the areas they were from on the islands. Mr. H Reviews covered this in great detail. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. It was a really good watch, and I recommend you check that one out after this one. But it told me one thing, the crew really cared about this story. For every question you might have had about the new Plains Hunter's look, there was a very good explanation, so props to them. I also noticed that the practical effects of the head were replaced with CGI, and there are videos out there as well explaining that this was because the suit actor literally couldn't see out of the costume while fully masked up, and he had to literally follow a trail of sticks on the ground. I wasn't happy about the change, but now I understand why they did it. On pacing, I've heard complaints that the story dragged in the first and second act, but I didn't feel that way. Maybe it's just a generational thing, but my Gen X brain didn't mind a break from the action and enjoy some of the location shooting while the character X got from point A to point B. I never liked that modern filmmakers had the need to fire hose the story viewer in 90 minutes or less anyway. Now on to the suspension of disbelief elements I mentioned in my introduction, specifically the final fight scene. Many out there are of the mind that 110-pound Naru wouldn't have had the least bit of chance against the Predator like she did in the final act, especially when getting tossed around like she did. But I will point this out, the orange calendula plants that she used to hide her heat signature from the hunter are also used in pain relief. Now, well, I would have chowed down on a handful of poppy bulbs myself and just gone at the Predator numb style. I think from a storytelling perspective, this plant could act somewhat as a painkiller MacGuffin in this situation, so I'll give it a pass. Also, she used traps and strategy against the hunter in much the same way Dutch did in the original. Well, you know what they say, when tech has failed, primal prevails. Nobody says that? Okay, well, I'm saying it now. Let's take a moment and talk about callbacks. We all caught the "if it bleeds, we can kill it" line from Tabe and Naru saying, "do it now," but I think I found one that nobody else saw. When the fur trappers were bleeding Tabe with the slash across the chest, the first person I thought back to was Billy, who would ultimately do the same thing before his death in the original movie. Now, granted, Billy's was self-inflicted, but I think it's a good homage either way, considering both died standing against the hunter with no fear. Of course, the Raphael Adolini pistol had to end up in this movie, and though it was sad to see a departure from the original Dark Horse comic story detailing its origins, let's face it, we were never going to get that movie. Although, this movie is set in 1719, so 4 years after the pistol's creation, so who knows, maybe we will. And also, I think the hobbled man never mentioned his name was Raphael, did he? So he could have just been a thief. But we'll see, we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, for a 100-minute movie, I was satisfied. If you have some free time, I recommend Prey. It's worlds better than the disappointments of sequels and spin-offs that have come along in the last decade. I hear there's also a Comanche cut of this movie that exists, and for what it's worth, I will have no problem adding this one to my shelf when the Blu-ray hit stores. Also, with the ending credits hinting at a sequel, we may get some closure on how the Raphael Adolini flintlock ended up back in the hands of the hunters. Maybe my trailer prediction will turn out correct after all, and Naru will be taken in by the Yautja tribe in the sequel, much like Michiko in the Dark Horse AVP comic. But as it turns out, I overshot the time for when it would happen. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, this has been Spartan for Last Century. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you around in the next video or live stream. Peace.